What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to examine Uncanny X-Men issue 150, brought to you by everyone right here. This is a double-size issue, but I'm not sure if I am going to have a whole lot to say about this issue. I'll try to be as thorough as I can, but reading through it, I was thinking, okay, I'll probably be able to talk about this in like 5 minutes. Now, admittedly, every time I say that, I end up spending like 15 minutes examining an issue. Also, it is a thunderstorm outside, so if you hear thunder, just pretend that it's Storm fighting Magneto right outside my window. So anyway, as we've seen in some previous issues, Magneto is back again. He has raised an island with these weird-looking Cthulhu-type statues, like octopus people statues on the island. And this is really interesting, and I don't think this was ever like explored or delved into. I was expecting the first time I read through these issues that Claremont was going to reveal that millions of years ago there were octopus people and there was going to be some kind of time travel thing or something, maybe in an annual, but as far as I can remember, there was never anything explaining the culture that used to live on this island that Magneto has raised. And Cyclops and Captain Lee Forrester, they are guests of Magneto. They're actually prisoners. Cyclops' powers don't work on this island. There's some kind of a doohickey that Magneto has that's canceling out any other mutants' powers. And this issue begins with Magneto sending out a broadcast to the world leaders saying, you are going to turn the world over to me within a week. And he is telling Cyclops and Lee Forrester, the world leaders are awful. There are so many people out there waging war and starving, and when I am in charge, all of that will be gone. And this isn't like, I recently read some of Paul Cornell's Action Comic stuff from right before the DC New 52 started, where Lex Luthor, he believes that he is humankind's greatest champion, and that superheroes are a detriment to humankind, and that Superman is getting in the way of humanity saving itself. Luthor sincerely believes that. The problem is, when Luthor gets godlike powers, the first thing he does, instead of saving humankind, is go after Superman, because he has a grudge against Superman. And this isn't like that. Magneto, he genuinely believes that he can make the world a better place, and he probably could. If all of the world leaders said, okay, we will hand the keys to the governments over to you, he probably would make a lot of improvements. But Cyclops makes a good point to Lee Forrester that that will only last for as long as Magneto's alive. Once he dies, there will be nobody to hold everything together, and it will all fall apart and probably get even worse than it was before Magneto was put in charge. So, his eternal peace that he dreams of for the planet and for mutant kind, it is not a long-lasting peace. This is not a long-term solution. And so, even though this is probably the beginning of Magneto being humanized, you can see little hints of it here and there. There was one issue where Magneto was looking at a picture of his wife Magda when he was on Asteroid M. So we've had little tiny hints of Magneto not being the mustache-twirling supervillain that he was in the 60s, but this is the beginning of Magneto actually kind of has a good point, but he's not right. The X-Men are in the right because, like Cyclops said, if Magneto wins in this issue, it doesn't last very long. And also, you've got so many people, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, who would fight against him, and it wouldn't be a peace, unless Magneto just kills everybody who has even a little bit of dissension against him, in which case, he's not really, it's not a utopia like he envisions it as. So the X-Men basically just accidentally stumble into this force field area where somehow the Blackbird crashes. It's something to do with being in proximity of the island that Magneto's raised. As far as I know, they just accidentally crashed here from their adventure where they were in the Savage Land in the previous issue. Nightcrawler does say that they've been looking for Cyclops and Lee Forrester, but they crashed a few issues ago, whenever the X-Men were in that arcade Doctor Doom adventure. That was when Cyclops and Lee were presumed missing. And so I don't know if Nightcrawler means we've been looking in between issues, or maybe they were out looking for Cyclops and Lee, and then they just happened to find where they were. But then The Blackbird crashes close to the island in the ocean, and then the X-Men, they're going to swim out. They only had enough life packs for 4 people. Nightcrawler, Storm, Kitty Pryde, and Wolverine. Colossus can breathe under, or doesn't need to breathe, so he didn't wear one, but since he is in proximity of Magneto's island, his powers wear off, and then he turns back human, and then he seemingly is going to drown. And then the X-Men sneak onto the island. Wolverine attacks Lee Forrester because she thought she saw something on the beach, and then she says, hey, wait, I'm a friend of Cyclops, and then they all make their big plan. Colossus is fine, by the way. They all make their big plan. They're going to split up in 2. Cyclops will take them in, and they are going to attack the big mechanism that Magneto is going to use to manipulate soil. And I forgot to mention that after Magneto makes his proclamation to the countries of the world, a Russian submarine launches some, I think, nuclear bombs, or maybe they're just regular bombs, I'm not sure. But at one point, the caption said they're afraid that they've just started World War III. So that's what makes me think they were not just regular bombs. But Magneto deactivates the bombs, and then he sinks the submarine. And there's this kind of chilling sequence of panels where the people on the sub say we're sinking down about 7,000 feet, and the pressure will kill us at about 1,000. And it's just, they're very calm about how they're all going to their death, and that was just very sombering right there. But Magneto says, hey, you guys attack me, and later on when we get to issue 200, and that's the trial of Magneto, that is going to be one of the big key moments of Magneto's trial, is that he killed an entire submarine of people, and his excuse is it was in self-defense. Now, you could argue that Magneto was threatening the entire planet, and so these Russian submarine guys, they were acting in self-defense because they don't want to be under the control of a guy who, at his very whim, he can destroy an entire city. And after he sinks the sub, that's what he does. He raises a volcano using this machine on this island, and he does give the people in this city enough time to evacuate, but he destroys the city. And then so there's this big machine. Also, I forgot to mention, Cyclops and Lee Forrester, I'm 99% sure they sleep together. They start kissing and smooching, and then the X-Men's plane crashes, and then later, Cyclops is in bed, and then Lee is in that room looking out the window, and that's when she sees the X-Men on the beach. So, I think that they have done the nasty. Anyway, Cyclops takes them in, and they're gonna go destroy the big thing that can manipulate the continents and land, which is what Magneto used to destroy that city and raise this island. And then Kitty, Storm, and Lee Forrester, they are going to try to destroy the computer that controls the thing. And then while Kitty and Lee are doing something, Storm separates from them and finds Magneto sleeping. And she is contemplating killing him in his sleep. And she keeps saying, like, well, Wolverine would do it, but I'm not going to do it. And then she stays in there, she keeps contemplating it. Magneto throws her out the window, and then he goes in, and Cyclops and Wolverine and the crew, they have successfully sank that thing in this giant pit, but then it's made of metal. Magneto just raises it up and repairs it. And then there's a little bit of a fight. This reminds me a little bit of when the X-Men, Jean, and Beast were in Antarctica, and then they were using pressure, like room temperature pressure. Storm was controlling the pressure in the room to make Magneto weaker. They do something similar here. Kitty Pryde separates from the rest of the group. Also, she is not wearing her roller skates in this issue. She has just regular boots. I guess she realized in the previous issue that roller skates are wildly impractical, so here she still has her awful costume, but she doesn't have the roller skates, so that's a step up. And then Magneto, he gets away from the other X-Men, and then he sees that Kitty has destroyed the memory circuits from his computer system, and then he is about to kill her, and then he realizes she is just a kid. And then this is what kind of sets him on the path of redemption. And Storm comes in and says, if you've hurt her, I am going to kill you. He says, go ahead, I'm done. I'm not going to be Magneto the supervillain anymore. I realized, and he mentions being a Holocaust survivor at this point. I can't remember if we had mentions of that in previous issues. I want to say maybe. I'm thinking that issue where he was in Asteroid M and he was looking at the pictures of Magda, I feel like maybe there were some references to him being a Holocaust survivor there. If not, this is the first time that has been referenced. He's telling Storm that he was at Auschwitz and the guards they killed his family like cattle, and then that kind of hardened him, and now he has become the kind of guy who wants to kill innocents, just like how the Nazis wanted to kill innocents. And he's kind of bemoaning how he didn't really mean for that to happen; it just kind of happened. And so Magneto flies away, and he's got a lot of time to think about what he's done. Kitty is okay. This is a little weird because there is one point where Magneto has all of the X-Men captured, and then and at some point the reason that the X-Men are suddenly able to attack, I can't remember how this happens, but somehow Magneto's machine, I think Magneto threw Storm out the window. Sorry if I sound jumbled, but there's a lot to unpack with this issue. Magneto threw Storm out the window. She didn't die, but he thinks that she did. She was able to catch onto this thing protruding out of the building. She sneaks back in, and then she destroys a machine. And I believe that is the machine that nullifies all the mutant abilities. So that's how the X-Men are able to fight back against Magneto. But while he has them captured, he sees Kitty. And at one point he says something like, "Yes, child, I will do da-da-da-da-da." And so he knows that she's a kid. He knows she's not like Nightcrawler and Cyclops' age. But then it's not until he's enraged that she has destroyed all the memory banks to this computer system that he tries to kill her, and then he realizes, oh, she's like 13 years old. Oops, what have I done? But you already saw her, and it's not like it would have made a difference if she was 16 versus being 13. You already knew she was significantly younger than the other X-Men. So that, I will say, doesn't quite work for me. I think maybe if they could have found a way for Magneto to have not seen Kitty until he tries to kill her, and then he realizes, oh, she's so young, I almost killed a child, and then he's thinking about how he was in the Holocaust and he was a child when that was going on, and then you could kind of, okay, that. And by the way, in this issue, he says, I used to believe, Storm says, if you have a god, pray to him. And he says, I used to believe when I was a boy, and then I stopped believing. So that hints that he was a kid during the Holocaust, right? Am I interpreting that correctly? But then years later, it's probably when Magneto is the headmaster of the school, and he is having a flashback to being in the Holocaust, and it shows him as like a full-grown man, and that's, I think, where he met Magda. And I think he had another wife, too, named Anya, so maybe I'm confusing Magda and Anya, I can't remember. But anyway, here, it seems to me that he is saying that he was a kid during the Holocaust. But anyway, everything's fine. The X-Men, they're hanging out on the beach. Wolverine mentions that Scott and Lee Forster seem to be an item. I am not sure how long that lasts, because after this, I can't think of any like major Scott Lee Forster moments between these two. She does know now that he is Cyclops of the X-Men, but I know after this, the next big milestone in Scott's life is Madeline Pryor. I'll talk about that more when we get to that, but I can't remember what happens between Cyclops and Lee. Also in this issue, at one point, Professor Xavier is on a boat with Maury McTaggart, Peter Corbeau, who we have not seen in this series, I want to say, since the X-Men came from the Star Corps mission and Jean became Phoenix the first time. Not Dark Phoenix, just regular Phoenix, and Peter Corbeau was part of that storyline. And Chris Claremont will never let a character that he worked on fall into obscurity. That is why he is one of the only people who will work on the character of Sage, and then characters like Red Lotus from his first Extreme X-Men series in the early 2000s. Anytime he's working on a book, you will see characters like that pop up again. That's why Spider-Woman and Carol Danvers will show up periodically in the X-Men series. And speaking of Carol Danvers, she is on the boat with Professor X, Maury McTaggart, and Peter Corbeau. And we will find out in a couple weeks what's going on with her. Because looking at, I wanted to make sure when I saw her here, I was like, oh no, did I accidentally miss Avengers Annual 10? No, that's going to be in a couple couple weeks, according to my calculations. But they are on a boat called the Deja Thoris 2. Deja Thoris is a character from the Edgar Rice Burroughs Barsoom books. That is John Carter of Mars, that whole series. Deja Thoris was the Princess of Mars. And so Claremont, a little bit of a Barsoom fan. I'm assuming Peter Corbeau is the owner of the boat, so he's probably also a little bit of a Barsoom fan. Kind of makes sense since he was the inventor of the space shuttle, the Star Corps, that he's a fan of space and a fan of science fiction, I guess. Anyway, the X-Men are on the beach at the end of the issue, and then Kitty Pryde does a little Star Wars joke. She had told Colossus, why don't you go and bring the Blackbird back onto the beach? And she's telling the X-Men, I'm going to use the Force to lift the boat up. And they're all like, what's going on? And then they see Colossus, and then it's like, oh, Kitty pranked us, and then they dunk her in the water. So that's a fun little cutesy ending. Professor Xavier is telling Moria that the X-Men think that this was just a draw, but they had a moral victory over Magneto. Even though they didn't physically defeat him, although this series likes to think that they've never had a victory over Magneto when they've had several, and I mentioned that last issue, I think. He says even though they physically didn't defeat him, although, like I say, they came pretty close, he is now going to rethink his methodology, and that is much more important. And I agree. And so the next time we see Magneto, he's going to be much closer to being an ally of the X-Men than an enemy. I can't remember where the original Secret Wars miniseries falls, but when you had a large selection of heroes and villains brought to this alien world by the Beyonder, and Magneto was brought there with the other heroes. The heroes were here, the villains were here, and Magneto was over here. That was written by Jim Shooter, and so he, I feel like, doesn't exactly have a handle on how Magneto should be written after he has had this epiphany. I almost killed a kid. I don't need to be a villain anymore. But when you get to the Secret Wars miniseries, he's still kind of acting villainous a little bit. I can't remember where that falls with, I think it's around Secret Wars 2 when Magneto actually starts like being a full-on ally to the X-Men. But that's a good little ways out, and I'm not even sure. I know I'm not going to talk about Secret Wars 2. I don't even have that comic, but I don't know if I'm going to talk about Secret Wars. I'd have to read the whole thing to talk about it. But anyway, that's about all I have to say about X-Men issue 150. I hope that you guys like this video, and I will be back in the future with more. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.